If you've ever played any video games at all, then you probably know about the Elder Scrolls series. Personally, I love those games. I've spent hundreds of hours on Skyrim, Oblivion, and Morrowind, but Bethesda's been dragging their feet with Elder Scrolls 6, and they got bought out by Microsoft. And Todd Howard sucks. So instead of buying the 5th re-release of Skyrim, I dug out a different open-world adventure game that came out back in 2011, Two Worlds 2. In the beginning, there's a huge Lord of the Rings-style war between humankind and the orcs, and the main antagonist of the game, Gandahar, drives the orcs to the brink of extinction with one spell. Then we create our character. Gandahar has us and our sister Kira, or Kyra, or however the voice actors feel like pronouncing it, locked up in a torture chamber. Also, our sister has an evil god inside of her. Then the few surviving orcs show up to bust us out. There's a rogue whose name I don't remember, Darfa, the sexualized assassin, a warrior whose name I don't remember, and Gortarius, the mage. They kill the guards and lead you through Gandahar's castle, and you can loot the dead guards taking their swords, which you can't use until you're level 16. For weapons you find in the tutorial. In fact, it's not even the tutorial yet, it's still the prologue. Anyway, Gandahar finds out you've escaped and sends his right-hand man Sordahan to find you, which leads to a fight between him and the orc warrior. When I was younger, I thought this fight scene was really cool, but now that I'm an adult who knows better, I don't want to be seen watching this.
Hey, what are you watching? Porn!
From this scene, it seems like they're setting Sordahan up to be a huge villain, but then... You make your escape to the actual tutorial and learn all the different approaches to combat. Stealth. You can sneak up and instantly kill enemies from behind, but only humanoid enemies. Specifically ones that are standing in one spot with their arms crossed, or peeing on a wall. It doesn't work on anyone else at all. Melee combat, which boils down to mashing the right trigger while holding left trigger, and a well-placed attack after blocking sends you spinning into a powerful counterattack, but for some reason this doesn't work if you have a shield equipped. Also, there's a glitch where the game just doesn't let you move or attack until you put your weapon away, which usually happens when you're surrounded by multiple enemies, like when I got jumped by dinosaurs and skeletons. Archery. It aims automatically while you charge up your shots, and you can aim manually if you want to shoot 2 arrows at once, and I never used a bow again after this point. And finally, magic. It's like archery, but it burns through mana. You can put together spells yourself through different effects and card-looking things, which I didn't feel like figuring out. Then we meet the prophet, Kasara, who is designed specifically to appeal to horny teenagers. She shows you the future where everyone dies because Gandahar bad. Then we meet the blacksmith, who teaches us to break down equipment we're not using into materials to upgrade what we want to use. I like this. It makes the mindless looting of everything have some meaning, and I find myself doing it at every given opportunity. Then we get to the savannah. As soon as we show up here, Kyra appears in our mind calling for help, and this has nothing to do with anything else that ever happens in the game. I'm not joking. Then we start looking for a way to get through the gates to reach the city of Hatmandor, and this lady says she'll give us a horse if we make some medicine for it by killing ostriches, because apparently that gives us mint roots somehow. She teaches you to make your own potions, and then you get a horse, which makes this the perfect time to talk about the controls. When you get into a fight, you need to draw your weapon, otherwise you'll just throw pathetic little non-damaging punches. But how do you draw your weapon? X? No, that's the map. Y? That's the quest log. It's down on the D-pad. Why, out of all the buttons on this controller, is the thing you do the most in this game down on the damn D-pad? That's supposed to be for navigating menus, but when I tried to use it for that, it just made me naked, because apparently that's how you switch between different equipment sets you've put together. But fine, whatever. There's still more wrong with the controls, though. In combat, you'll need to block incoming attacks, and to do that, you hold the left trigger. Fine, simple enough. But when you need to sprint, you hold the left trigger. And that works even with your weapon drawn. I'll try to block sometimes, only to run full sprint into somebody's sword. When you need to sneak, it's the left trigger. Why did they tie so many core mechanics of the game to just one button? As for riding the horse, it feels kinda like driving a car, except the brake is the gas pedal, and what I mean by that is left trigger. Only you don't simply press and hold it, you have to mash it. If you're ever not mashing, your horse will quickly slow to a stop. But when you want it to stop, it goes for much longer than you want it to. But if you mash too much, the horse bucks you off. It's like they found the perfect balance of weird on the horse controls to make it as annoying as possible. It makes no sense. But you know what makes even less sense? A rhinoceros is an easier target than an oversized bug. A big ant is harder to kill than a rhino. Whose idea was this? I know I already mentioned the combat being mostly mashing the right trigger, but there is a little more to it than that. You can pick up skill books teaching you different moves to be used in battle. Some are tied to specific weapons like blunt force. It can only be used with a mace and has a chance to stun enemies. Radial barrage, a spinning attack for when you're surrounded that can only be done with a two-handed weapon. There are skills that can be used with any weapon, like Block Breaker, which only damages an enemy through their guard rather than opening them up for more regular attacks, or Humbling Blow, which can knock down enemies, leaving them vulnerable to an instant kill stab, which can only be done with a bladed weapon. Also, this only works on humanoid enemies, and for some reason giant scorpions. If you're low on health and don't have any potions, you can put your sword away and your health starts regenerating, then it's just a matter of keeping your distance until you're all healed up. This is something I exploited the hell out of so I could save my vast stores of healing potions for when I really needed them, which made many of the battles look something like this. And some enemies resist certain damage types, which makes sense. Skeletons are more susceptible to bludgeoning weapons than blades, but this can be annoying when there's a mix of slash-resistant and blunt-resistant enemies in one dungeon, especially when you find a new sword that you really want to use only to encounter stone sentinels at every turn, so you have to switch to an axe that for some reason counts as a blunt weapon. Moving on with the story, you need a pass to get through the gates, so you'll have to explore different options on getting through. A few people will offer to sell you a pass or show you a smuggler's tunnel around the gate, but a lot of them will just swindle you out of a few hundred gold. There's one lady who offers you a pass for some unsavory business, but I didn't like her, so I killed her. And by that, I mean I ran away to regenerate and she fell off the lighthouse stairs trying to follow me back up. And then I had a retired scribe make me a passable forgery. You reach the city and start looking into the Tower of Fangs, working with some less than reputable characters. Then you find this guy who sends you to get a dragon's fang to animate an army of crystal golems to fight against Gandohar, and then we never see him or his golem army again. Make our way to the tower and find Gandohar's journal, then we fight what looks like a cheap knockoff of the Predator as our Chapter 1 boss, and this is just like every other fight in the game. No special gimmicks, no big attacks you need to avoid. The only thing about this guy is he can occasionally knock you down. You give the journal to the prophet, then you go to a place with a bunch of Japanese architecture, and you help this guy, help this guy, help this lady, punch that guy, help this guy, and get surgery from a cultist that lets you look into the past and see that Gandahar was still a dick in his younger years. I know I didn't go into any great detail about what was going on between the people you help, and that's because the details aren't worth going into. It mostly boils down to talk to this person for me, or go to a specific spot and use the item I gave you. Anyway, you report back to Kasara, and Sordahan is back from the dead. Kill him again, and then you're off to a swamp. A priest tells you that a witch put a curse on the area, and they're all trapped in the swamp by a barrier, and there are zombies everywhere. You go to the witch, and she tells you she's been fighting the curse back all this time. More running around, talking to people, and gathering things. Then the priest is actually a demon. Kill him and take his heart. And then it's time to finally sneak into Gandahar's castle. You get to the throne room and, surprise, Darfa's here. Surprise, Gandahar's a good guy. He was using your life force to keep your sister alive so the evil god couldn't escape. Surprise, Kasara is evil and she's a dragon. You head to the top of a tower to perform a ritual to banish the evil god from your sister, but you still have a final boss. It's a gimmick fight, and not a good one either. You dodge fireballs, run from one ballista to another trying to shoot her down. Once she's low enough, she'll spit out a magma sentinel, and you fight that while still dodging fireballs, which wouldn't be so bad on its own, but later she spits out 2 of them at once, and when she's down to her last hit, 3 of them. Land the last shot, she's dead, Gandahar's dead, the evil god is banished once and for all, your sister takes Gandahar's place as the emperor, and you take a walk in the woods with Darfa, and she's gone. The end. I wanted this game to be better than it was. It was decent, but it could have been better. The sense of exploration is there, the lockpicking is good. There was an attempt to give the combat more depth, but it ultimately falls short. The stealth was lacking, the wacky-ass control scheme is frustrating, and pair that with some bugs and glitches, and I can't recommend playing this game yourself, unless you get it for about $5. And it is available on Steam, and so is the first game. They're bound to go on sale at some point, so if you're really that curious about these games, well, there you go. And that was Two Worlds 2. It's not great, but I've definitely played worse. One such game would be the first Two Worlds. To give you an idea, I've heard the developers had to send out letters to retailers apologizing for how bad the first game was, and the second game was their attempt to make things right. And I really wanted them to get that redemption, so when I was younger, I tried my hardest to convince myself that this game was great. But the truth is, Two Worlds 2 is just okay. It's not bad enough for me to say it's bad, not good enough for me to say it's good. It's somewhere in the middle, and will one day fade into obscurity. Whereas the first game will always be remembered as a monumental dumpster fire of the Xbox 360 library. But that's a story for another day. So instead of buying the 5th re-release of Skyrim, I dug out a different open-world adventure game that came out back in 2011. I tried my hardest to convince myself that this game, wrong game,